my lovely co-host is ready, so I'll let her introduce who she is and what she does.
Hello, hello. Thank you for facilitating this and inviting me. As Jane said, my name is Latoya Watson. I am a licensed therapist, speaker, coach, and a former teen mom. So I will be sharing a little bit about my story, and I thank you all for joining us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as we go into this, Toy and I agreed that we would just kind of share our personal journeys uh, as it relates to the inner child. And for me, I always go back to it really starts around 2015, right? So 2015, I'm just I think there's a Charlie Brown character where I think there's a dust cloud is following him or whatever or something. I could have this totally wrong, but I think there's a Charlie Brown character, Snoopy's character, where there's this dust cloud just either overhead or following somebody. And for me, it was a dark cloud of depression.
Mm,
Really, the the many years I had been on this earth had culminated in just a moment in time where I just felt the most defeated that I've ever felt. I felt more of a failure as a father, as a person. And it's interesting because it came on the heels of probably the most successful time of my life, just being recognized um, in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area as one of the premier ministers in that area. I was at the 13th largest church, really was doing some amazing things. But because I had something going on the inside that I could not identify at that time, um, I had this habit of self sabotaging my life. And I know now it was kind of my inner child crying for help and really kind of disrupting my life the same way a child may be trying to get your attention. Um, and so as I progressed through that time, and I think it was as I was emerging out of the dark place, I started understanding more about how inner child works.
mm,
And I was actually at a homeless shelter at the time. And as I started studying more about the inner child, and I'm like, that's what I'm dealing with. I'm like, because I can remember my childhood, the pain for me, and I'm not trying to throw any of my family members or loved ones under the bus, but for me, that was a very painful period of time in my life. And so I learned to uh, address some things by not addressing some things, by putting some things away in the closet, by sweeping some things under the rug. So as I progressed and matured in age, there were still those things there that was related to my younger self, Jamie, that was not being addressed, that had just been put to a side. And I think one of the things that Toy and I would both agree on is those things that we think we either turn our back on or that we do slide under the rug or do lock away in a closet. It doesn't mean that it goes away. As a matter
mm.
of fact, it starts kind of beating on that door, it starts trying to emerge in our lives. And the more we try to push those experiences away or push them down, the more disruptive our life becomes until we address it. So I really began to address it so much so that while I was in a homeless shelter, I said, I gotta begin to teach on this. And some of you who may be listening may have been part of that class uh, because some of you still my friends to this day. I started reaching out to people and I was like, look, I want you to be a part of this class that I'm doing, reconnecting with the inner child. I remember the video being grainy. I remember it was in a corner of a library, but it was just so important for me to get this message out. So that's kind of my journey a little bit. I'll let Toya share her journey.
Yeah, there's so much that you said that I can relate to. I'll start with when you said your video being grainy. So when I did the Evolve Your Inner Child challenge last year, shout out to the ladies who were a part of it, been rocking with me from then. I remember like I think the first 2 days, the service wasn't good. I don't know, I was having technical difficulties, but I was like, I don't care, I'm getting this message across. I felt the same exact way. Like when you're so passionate about it, um it hits differently, as the young people say, it hits differently. um where should I start?
Start
So
with, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
yeah,
thought you
yeah.
was asking me. I thought you were literally asking me, but no, go ahead.
I kind of was. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I want to know, and I think I may speak for more than a few people. When did you come to the realization that, first of all, about inner child, and
Mm,
then then that it was your inner child that was kind of behind the scenes pulling some strings in your life?
yeah. Pulling some strings. So, oh, something before I share it, something else you said about self-sabotaging. It's so funny. Today, it popped up in my memories about don't self-sabotage because
Mhm.
I'll share in the past, I used to do it a lot, but
Yeah.
now I'm more mindful when it pops up. I'm like, is that, and I'm able to not fall into that or not
Right.
spiral into it. But yeah, so I first came across inner child in 2017 when I saw a therapist for the first time. She introduced it to me, but here's the thing, I wasn't really ready to go there. Like we did a
Mm.
couple sessions
Yeah.
and I was like, I actually stopped going to her. And
Were
because
you
I was
running
just,
for you?
it's kind of, yeah, I was. It was kind of heavy. And this was my first time seeing a
Yeah.
therapist. This is my
Right.
first time seeing a therapist. And I was like, oh, um, yeah.
Did you
So,
feel all the stigma? Did you feel all the stigma behind it at
oh
that
yeah,
time?
and I was a
Okay.
therapist already at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was a therapist already at that time because I passed my clinical license in 2014. So
Mhm.
yeah, I was already a therapist and in my own private practice and everything, but I was not, I wasn't aware of this. I think I might have heard bits and pieces, but anyways, I stopped going to her and I noticed things would come up. And so I started doing research on my own and getting books and all these things. And that's where my love for it developed.
Yeah. So for those who are listening, if you are familiar with inner child or inner child work, just give me a yes in the comments. Again, if you're watching this on replay, just do it while you're watching this on replay. I know there was quite a few interest in people um, wanting to view this, and so I do think some people have some things going on. But at whatever point you're watching this, so Shondell says yes, she's familiar with it, etc.
Hey.
So was it through your therapist that you began to apply it? I can't remember even if you even said you went back. Did you ever go back?
I did years
Okay,
later,
so was it
years
through
later.
was it through your own research or through your therapist that you started
Um, so yeah, when she did a couple sessions with me
on?
and then I stopped. So she introduced me to it, but
Yeah,
then the real work really happened when I felt like I needed to go at my own pace.
yeah,
And I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to like master it and also taking my time with it. And so I think that's so important because um the work is can be heavy, right?
yeah.
And I think the way I was introduced into it was I needed a slower, I yeah, I needed it to slow down.
Right.
So I try to be mindful of that when working with clients, but yeah, the real, as they say, the real magic happened and my eyes started being open to different things as I started to read more. And
Yeah.
are you familiar with the non-dominant hand
Yeah. Yeah.
exercises?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And that was really like mind blowing for me.
Yeah. I'll tell you what it was for me. Mine was very generic, but it was
Mm.
very each morning when I woke up, I would just greet Jamie, my younger self.
But
And
how did you know? I'm sure someone
well,
in the audience wants to know. How did you know to just greet Jamie?
because I had been reading, I had been doing research as well, right? Like I had been
Okay.
reading, when it first showed up on my radar, and I'm research everything. Like I don't care what it is, whether it's a word I don't know, whether it's a topic or something I don't know. Google is my best friend. So I remember Googling it and just I just read so many articles. Of course,
Mm,
you go to YouTube, you're looking at so many YouTube videos. And
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I just knew this is what I need. This is what I need. And so at some point, either what I read or what I saw was just like relate to your inner child. And so each morning, and maybe at times periodically throughout the day, I would address Jamie. I was just, look, I'm here for you. It would be the constant reminder of, especially if certain situations come up. I know you're afraid, but I got you.
Yeah,
And,
that's so
you know,
big. And for a
yeah,
man to say that.
yeah, yeah. I was at the place in my life, and really for those who are listening, and this, I have to believe that this probably includes you as well to some degree, that to really delve into this, you have to be at that point of, I don't care whatever I got to do. I don't
Mm,
care. I can't go back to that, whatever your that is. And
mhm.
so, yeah, whether as a man, if I'm thinking this is going to be effective for me, it's not just is it going to be effective for me, but it just made so much sense because I know what my childhood is. And
Right.
which is funny because as I do this work now, I do this work through the medium of hypnotherapy. And one of the things I tell clients that go through this work with me is that, Toy, I see it happening with my child now. I see it. Fortunately, she has me, and I let her walk out her journey. But there are things that she may go through that she's unhappy about, and she'd be like, "Daddy, I don't want to talk about it." That's
Mm,
her locking something away in a closet. That's her sliding something under a rug. And I know how to address her and approach her when she's not in that moment. And it really, for me, it's really about making sure we have that trust factor in place because she shares a lot with me. And sometimes the stuff she shares with me, I'm like, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together.
mhm.
Oh, okay,
Same
sweet.
with mine.
So, but it's important that we have that trust that she knows when she is ready to talk to daddy, or she is ready to talk to mommy or whatever. But for me, just speaking about myself, that daddy is a safe place for me to be able to share. But I know that when she doesn't address something, that's the same thing we do when we were children. We lock something away that at some point we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So especially if we know we're dealing with things like insecurity or
Right.
we're dealing with fears. I was taught that you only are born with two fears. That's fear of falling and that's fear of loud noises. So the fear of what somebody else is going to think about me, the fear of failure, those are things that are learned, and those things can be traced back to when we were very young. And so
Yeah.
being able to again identify it and then address it, you're now, you know, at the very least you're able to manage it. At the most, you're able to overcome it. So for those who are listening and maybe are in business or you're dealing with relationships and you're just kind of running that same cycle over and over again, I know Toya's big thing is relationships, and really that's how I came out the gate
Mhm.
with relationships. It's so very important to be able to manage that when you're dealing with your inner child. And Toya, I'll ask you this, and maybe I'll chime in afterwards. But how does our inner child show up in relationships?
Hmm. It's a loaded question. It's a loaded question. So many different ways. I will start with, I'm like, where do I want to go? I'll start with a story that many people may have heard of. Did you watch the Mary J. Blige documentary last year?
I feel like I did, but I'm not really sure. If anybody who's watching this has watched it, give us a yes in the comments if you watched it. But let's just say no. Let's just say no because
Okay.
it doesn't come to mind immediately.
Um, yeah, that was so powerful the way she talked about her inner child and how it showed up in
Mhm.
relationships, but what it can show up like, and I think I'll use for a foundation. Are you familiar with the different attachment styles?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So like, well, I'll look at the insecure attachment style. So like the avoidant, right? Avoidant, ambivalent, how that can show up for our inner child is wanting connection, but pulling away, unsure.
Mhm,
So sometimes what I see is women and men
mhm.
will have difficulties with committing. Like
Mm.
commitment is difficult. And I'm gonna go there.
Go
Um,
there, Tori. Go there.
go there. I think sometimes when people say, I don't want to be in a monogamous relationship, is it easier to just cop out and not be monogamous and live like the poly lifestyle?
Yeah,
Is it because of a wounded inner child?
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a
Right,
good
and that's something to consider because I don't want to speak for Toya, but I'm clear she's not. And neither and nothing that we're saying are we judging anybody's
oh
choices or their
yeah,
decisions.
absolutely not.
But we do want to raise awareness and
Yeah.
and things to consider. And I agree with you, Joy. That could definitely be part of some people's experiences when they
Mhm.
relate to that. Because and it's so funny because it comes to mind. Certain people come to mind who've dealt with abandonment
Yeah.
that have peeked into the polyamorous lifestyle.
Mhm.
And as I listen to you, I think, wow, if I have two people supporting me or there for me, I have twice the chance of not being abandoned
Mhm.
and experiencing that childhood.
Fear of
that childhood
abandonment.
trauma.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
part of my story. I
yeah,
share a little bit for people who are new to my page. I used to talk a lot about being a serial monogamous. Like I was
mhm,
always in a long-term relationship. There was a
mhm,
part of me that was fearful of abandonment or fearful of being rejected. And I also placed my self-worth was
mhm,
dependent on my relationship status. All of that. And healing my inner child was so essential in me overcoming all of that. I really don't think if I never healed my inner child, I think I would have still been in that
mhm.
same cycle, you
I
know.
agree. It's as I listened to you, it showed up in various ways in my life, right? And one of the ways it
Yeah.
showed up was me not stepping in, taking responsibility for my life, and really taking more of a leadership role or co-leadership role in my relationships. And what that looked like was I'm looking at what you're doing to determine what I'm looking at.
Mm,
And you know, because I was very much a follower. My former self was very much passive aggressive.
mm.
Um,
Little bit of a people pleaser.
yeah, definitely, not even a little bit. Definitely a big people pleaser, and that's where my identity came from at that
Yeah.
I think those who know me now know that's quite different. But yeah, I was raised where my mother may be looking at this at some point, so she could probably agree. But I was raised where my mother did a lot of stuff for me over a long period of time. Like I still, at some point she did kind of, cut the coat strings, and she was like, "Look, y'all got to figure this out on yourself." But for a long time, she would put my clothes out longer than what I thought she should. She would still,
This is a message for some single moms.
right, right, right.
I've been
So
there.
yeah, so I was a follower. I was very much in my own way a mother's boy, and so when I would enter into a relationship, I'm looking to the woman for direction.
Mm,
Um, and if that's and again, there's no judgment on if that's someone's relationship style. Because I was sharing with Toya, I think yesterday in Messenger that you get to define what your relationship is like, but it was the
mm,
motive for why I was doing it.
right.
And so that harkened back to Jamie. That's what Jamie was used to. That was his safe place, right? And so, putting yourself out there where you're looking for validation, you're looking for confirmation that you're a good person from other people, or you're looking to take less responsibility for your life and place that more in the hands of other people. Those types of things again harken back to your inner child. And I know one of the hot topics is relationships. And I know again a lot of people start following me for that reason. And I definitely want to give Toya a shout out. She has a Facebook group, and Toya, you can definitely put that in the comments or share a name with that at some point.
Yeah,
And
circle.
it would definitely serve you to head over to that group and maybe be a part of that community to really begin to flush this stuff out. But yeah, my inner child showed up in that way, and my inner child experienced a greater portion of hurt. Our inner child experiences a greater force of the hurt that comes in our lives, and that's why it was always important for me to affirm mine that I got you now. Like I'm going to stand up for us. And when you start taking control of your life, when you start taking responsibility for your life and essentially your inner child's life, you can have those hard conversations with some
Yeah,
people. You can be direct with some people because your inner child becomes the most important person in your world. I mean,
perfect.
it even occupies the space that your children have. Some people call it reparenting or parenting your inner child.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta say something, even if you are maybe that passive type or passive aggressive type, you kind of get the same way you're protective of your children, you become protective of your inner child because I can't go back there. Like I can't go back to living that life where I'm fractured from my inner child, where there's that disconnect. And so share with me, Toya, how an example, real life example, maybe from your life, maybe from a client's life, where having connected to your inner child, you respond to a situation differently.
Yeah. I will share a success story, and
I like success
it
stories.
actually is of another gentleman. So let me back up and say, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is because I know I have a lot of male followers as well,
Mhm.
whether it's family, platonic, male friends. I really, really encourage them all about connecting with their inner child. And I know for men, it is not always easy, right? But I will say one of my success clients was a gentleman, and I was so impressed. And I think going back to what you said, James, he really wanted to work through some things. He
Yeah.
really wanted to heal. He put the work in. And so I'll tell you a little bit about some of the growth that he made.
Mhm.
Specifically for him, it was showing up with irritability, um, and anger, right? Which tends to be common, I think, because society makes men feel like they can't always safely express themselves. There
Yeah.
are many men walking around with a lot of anger, and I
Right.
hate to generalize that, but I'll say a good amount.
Mhm.
Um, and so he had gotten written up at work for
Mhm.
like exploding on a resident or a coworker. There was a couple incidents, which is why he came to see me. And through our work together, we were able to, and I asked him before about sharing this, but he was able to we were able to get to the root of it and
Yeah.
help him connect to his younger self, which um his mother was a single mom, and he often felt neglected by her.
Mhm.
He also felt emotionally she didn't have
Available.
the tools to, yes, to
Yeah.
provide an emotionally safe space for him.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I helped him with connecting with that younger part. And he was amazed at, he was blown away by the progress that he made,
Yes.
and the work and the tears that were
Yes.
flowing.
Oh my
And
goodness. I remember. Yeah. I remember. I remember
I,
those times. Yeah.
yeah, so much, so much. And I actually saw him like a year ago because I had worked with him a few years ago, and
Mhm.
he was just like, he's still doing well. And that's the powerful That's the power of inner
Yeah.
child, because unlike, and nothing against talk therapy, but unlike other type of techniques, when
Hmm.
you heal and connect your inner child, there's no, you're not regressing. Like there's none of that is happening. None of that
Yeah.
is happening. It's
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing about that, because I've done inner child work with others, and the biggest thing I see, Toy, is to be consistent, right? Like it's to really get that lasting effect, to really get that optimal experience where now you're becoming whole, because being disconnected from your inner child is really a fractured self. And
yeah,
so reconnecting, you now become whole. But it is, because for me, it was every single day. I'm
yeah,
addressing Jamie as I'm dealing with experiences that would have caused me to be apprehensive or whatever. I'm recognizing that's what my inner child's experiencing. And I'm like, look, we're going to do this. I got us. No one else is going. I'm not going to allow anyone to hurt us. I'm not going to allow anyone to take advantage of us. I got us now. And it's
mm,
also, so it's also that piece of recognizing the mature aspect of yourself as well, that will be doing the parenting, that will be standing up, that will be speaking up for. But I can definitely remember many times in that very beginning, the tears would flow. And until I spoke to you, I never even thought about it from the sense that, the man, you know, doing it versus female doing it. Because
yeah,
for me, it was like I got to do whatever I got to do. Like I got to do whatever I got to do to be absolutely whole. And thinking in terms of, I have a daughter. Thinking in terms of, I want to be the best version of me that I can possibly be. Thinking in terms of, I don't want to go back to, where I was at before. And for me, it was similar to his story. I felt my mother wasn't emotionally and mentally. I felt my mother was emotionally and mentally unavailable growing up,
yeah.
and she might even say the same. And
Mm.
so really
She did the
questioning.
best she can, right?
Yeah,
Let me just
exactly,
put that
exactly,
out
and
there. Yeah.
that's all we
For
can
people who
expect.
are watching, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for those who, if my mother has to be watching this, my mother and we have an amazing relationship. That's my girl. That's my first love.
Hmm.
Um, and we both have grown
Oh,
and
mama's boy.
evolved. Not actually
Hey,
not.
you
No,
said it, not
actually,
me.
I'm super. It's crazy, but I'm super independent. I'm super independent. But there is that. There's definitely that. Like, there's definitely that. I love my mom. I love my mom. And I
No,
don't even
that's,
call. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
even call her mama, but I love her. Because I think about her journey, right?
yeah,
And I think that's an important part of it as well, because as we were influenced by those that were over us, or those who had influence over us, it's always good to pause and think about, what did they hear? What did they experience? What did
right.
they go? What about their inner child? And because I have certain clients that were working through their emotions around their parents, and that's something that I'm very intentional about reminding them that they had their own experiences. That where you have the gift of a Toya or James to be able to bring awareness to things that you didn't know before, they didn't they didn't always have that opportunity, or didn't have that opportunity at all. So we definitely have to hold space for them and hold them at the place of understanding and forgiveness. But we're just speaking
It's
facts.
a journey,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I just want to, and I'm sorry to
No, 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 no.
interject.
We're on the couch
I just,
here. We're on the couch.
we're on the couch. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's important because I have had clients who are not able to go there with, as far as they are not able to fully forgive their
Yeah.
parents yet.
Yeah.
Um, but they, and the inner child work is not a pointing fingers, like I don't blame, but it takes time to get there, because some people may still be struggling with, why weren't my parents able to show up better for me?
Sure.
Right? Like
Sure.
I hear these questions, it is a reality. People are like, well, they should have done better,
Right.
So I just
Right.
want to put that out there. But I think it's still powerful work, even if you are able to connect. And even if you're not able, I also have seen James. I almost called you Jamie. Maybe I want to
It's fine.
on
When we get together, it's often our inner child connecting anyway. But go ahead.
I know. Um, yeah, what was I gonna say? Um, I forgot.
I threw you off. My bad.
It's okay. It's okay. It'll come back. I think I was just saying about the process,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a journey, it's a process. Do you want to, I know we've been talking for a bit. Do you want to stop and see if people have questions?
Yeah, you know what? Great minds, because that's what I was thinking. I definitely want to. I
It's
definitely
a
for
lot
those.
to process.
Yeah, and even if you're watching again, watching some replays, you have questions.
Yeah.
Definitely just ask the questions. Toy and I will circle back and provide you with the best answer that we can. So yeah, if you have any questions about your inner child, how do I connect with them? What are my first steps? Um, what are the benefits? How does that eventually play out? What does that look like on a regular basis? Definitely, if you have any questions around it, Toy and I definitely we're hopping on and we're discussing it, but we're discussing it because we want to make ourselves available to you. Because it's been, again, as I begin this conversation, it's been so tremendous for both of us.
Mhm.
And so we feel privileged to even be in this position to not just be healed in our own lives, but be able to offer that to other people as well. So if you have any questions, ask your questions. If even if you're looking for more information, again, I know Tori's going to give um, her group information where you can get in there with some like-minded souls. So I'm kind of talking while I'm giving you opportunity to ask your questions, but until they show up, um, when I did my challenge, and I think Toya, I think we already discussed. We probably should do a challenge together. I think we already talked about it, right?
Mm,
She's like, I don't know you, James. What are you talking about?
I think we
we,
might have
we,
touched on it.
we should join forces at some point, like the Super Friends or something, and definitely share our different perspectives on it, bring it out
Yeah.
more. Um, but it is a constant relationship. It is a constant relationship until you feel that wholeness overtake you, and then doing the maintenance on it. Still touching base, still maybe recognizing in the moment, this is not me, this is my inner child. And what I do specifically, I didn't know Toya when she did her challenge, and I think she was serving women
Single ladies.
around
Yep.
this. Yeah. So for me, the way I deal with it now is through hypnotherapy. And just for those who may have some interest or may be familiar with hypnotherapy or may not be familiar with hypnotherapy, the it really relates to that early childhood period, because during that early childhood period, uh, the last trimester of pregnancy up into this first 7 years of life, we are in what's called a theta state, brainwave state, theta state. And that means that we're taking in everything, everything. After 7 years old, we start filtering out stuff based on what we need to move around in the world. But during that first 7 years, we're taking in everything. And so, what I do with my clients is I put them back into that theta state. And that theta state is that state just before you fully fall asleep. You're in that, or you're just fully waking up, just before you're fully awake. That is your theta state. That is when you are most impressionable from a subconscious standpoint. So for those who are not familiar with hypnotherapy, you're always in control. You can come in and go out of it as you choose. But now we're going into that programming. And what I do through visualization is I have you meet your inner child through visualization, and my clients feel, because this is how hypnotherapy works, this is how the theta state works, feel as if they are right there with their younger version of themselves. And so you can more, and I didn't even know this when I was initially going through my inner child experience of talking to my younger self daily. Um, but it's been so powerful for people now. You're in that moment and you get to say everything that you um, have never said. You get to have the a deeper level of relationship with them that maybe you didn't even wasn't even mindful was possible. And so you are able to assure them, you're able to affirm them, you're able to communicate with them in a much deeper level. And all of that becomes a part of your new subconscious programming, um, to the point where you now start walking out your life in that way. Because think about this: if your inner child was affirmed, if your inner child was supported, or you as a child was supported, was affirmed, how would your life look differently?
Mhm.
And with what I do, your life now starts to take on that form of what would have been different if you had that emotional and mental support. Because I always say this: your subconscious doesn't know whether you are imagining something or in the moment experiencing something. So imagine if you're able to rewrite your story as if this happened and that happened. Your subconscious now accepts that as your truth. And you start walking out and drawing to yourself experiences, that match your new truth. For those who are familiar with NLP, it's called re-imprinting, and it's just overlaying those current experiences, those former experiences, with what you desire had happened, and that now becomes your new reality. So now, as you're affirming your inner child, as you're speaking, even letting them know that, look, people, maybe the people that were over you were hurting themselves, as you start affirming and supporting, you start walking out a new reality, a new experience. So I don't see any questions. I
I
know some
was just
people,
gonna
again, we're
check.
watching the replay. Some people reached out to me, said, James, I have this going on, and I'm definitely going to be circling back. So if you have any questions, put those in the chat. If you're watching some replay, put it in the chat. If you got any comments, put it in the chat. So Tori, anything we want to close with, or anything you want to share toward the end here?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm thinking about some quick techniques that people can probably do on their own. But
Awesome.
before I say that, I want to give an example of how my inner child shows up sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because when you were talking about the maintenance of checking in, I was like,
Mhm.
do I do I do a check-in daily? I think there are some days where I don't.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
it may
yeah,
not be necessary, right?
well, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
But maybe I think it would help when there are moments where when I feel overwhelmed,
Mhm.
then I'm like checking in, like what's going on?
Yeah.
Why does baby Toya feel like she wants to have a tantrum right now and run away? Literally. Like we're on Google flights, like
Right.
we got to get out of here. What's
Right. Right. That part. That part.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, maybe if you had, and so something that I will sit and think about sometimes when I feel overwhelmed is checking in, what does my inner child need right now?
Mm.
Sometimes, like, main things that we sometimes need are rest.
Yeah.
Ladies who are overachievers, like, listen, I get it. Resting, giving ourselves permission to rest is so difficult.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes we need to have fun. We need to just do something like playful. That
Yeah.
comes up for me a lot because I feel like I work a lot, especially because I work from home. And I have my moments where like you're working too much. Like, when are we gonna do something fun? Literally. I
And there's a
Is there a
question when you
question?
finish.
Oh,
Finish. Finish.
yeah, but another way that it can show up for us needing rest, play, sometimes food, like we need to feed our bodies.
Yeah.
Um, Again, sometimes we're just working or we're running around doing other things. We're not taking care of our bodies.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes we need love, but we need to show ourselves love. We need to show ourselves kindness and grace and compassion. Grace is like my favorite word. Um, but yeah, what's the
I love
question?
all of that. So Tanya Ray says, do you think there is a connection where those who struggle to connect with their inner child or their childhood wounds are unable to connect with parental figures later on, or mentors? Let me know if I need to read that again.
No, 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 I got it.
Okay.
I haven't thought about that. Do you want to go, you want to answer, James, and then
Yeah, so
I'll,
let me read it one more
yeah,
again.
sure, read it again.
Do you think there's a connection where those who struggle to connect with their inner child childhood wounds are unable to connect with parental figures later on or mentors? I think there's a connection to that. And if I'm understanding you correctly, Tanya, um, and correct me if you feel like I'm not. I think when we are wounded by authority figures growing up, which essentially is the case, whether it's your parents or some influential figure or a teacher, whatever, it does cause you to feel like, my whole thing, my mother would tell you, I'm super stubborn. I don't like anybody telling me what to do.
Mm,
That's my inner child. That's my inner child because, I don't, and so how I relate to, I'm transition. I manage that better now. Um, but I still recognize that that's still a part of me. And so authority figures or, maybe not so much mentors, because I feel like I've invited them if they're mentors. But some authority figure who presents themselves as someone who feel they may know more than I do, I'm more resistant to them. And my ego may come up and let them know that, oh, I know some stuff. So that's probably my inner child in that way. And so it does affect how I relate to them. Now, as I'm managing my inner child, I understand that there's no authority figure. That there, and what I say by that is that there's no one that I'm not equal to. But if I've invited them in for counsel or advice, I can say they may be an expert in this particular area, but person to person, I'm not unequal to them. They may know something in an area that I don't know. So yes, yeah, Tony says, and that's because I'm it. So it looks like the Toya tribe is showing up here, and we celebrate. Look,
Woo-hoo.
she celebrates, but I celebrate you all coming in. So I do think there's a connection, and Toya, I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, such a thought-provoking question. And what's coming up is yeah, I'm in agreement with what you mentioned, James, and because I'm thinking about if you have certain wounds, like you said, from childhood,
Mhm.
that sometimes makes it difficult for people to trust others in general.
Yeah,
So I could see how it would be difficult if this person cannot connect with their inner child. And so I'm guessing this person may have a difficulty connecting with their emotions or being self-aware.
yeah, yeah.
They're going to struggle with um, being open to other people, feedback, mentors, teachers. Like one of my coaches will say, everybody's not coachable. It's just because you have to be open. Everybody is not open to feedback. Everybody is not open to opinions.
Mhm.
Is it connected to a wounded inner child? I could definitely see that. Could definitely
Yeah,
see that. Because
yeah,
that's how we
yeah,
first build trust, right?
yeah.
Our
and and
adult
that's, and that's
caretakers.
where, and even as as children, we feel so weak or we feel so vulnerable to those who are over us, right?
Mm,
Especially if they are responding to us in a way that we feel that makes us feel less than or makes us that it just brings out that vulnerability even that much more. Now that I'm older, um, yeah, I'm it because I always think like this, Toy. You probably find this in your practice as well. That most of our interactions, for some people, it isn't about the present moment person.
yeah.
Some are just responding to their mother with a different face. Some are just responding to their father with a different space. And so the person that they may be resistant isn't really the person that's in their immediate environment. They are now resisting someone who they once felt helpless to, felt weakness to. They're resisting them in the face of this person.
Yeah, yeah,
And I,
yeah.
yeah, And I think that plays out, and it's, you know, for
I
me,
think you
it's
gotta say that again. I think you gotta say that again. That was because that's so deep. And yeah, most
yeah,
time wounded
yeah,
inner
and
child
just to
is
say it again, and yeah, that we are not always in every moment dealing with the present moment person.
yeah,
We're often dealing with that influential figure or that mother or that father with just a different face. And so, what I couldn't say to my mother because I was 3 years old, 2 years old, what I couldn't say to my father because I was 5, 7 years old, I am now saying to this person, or I'm now saying to my father in the face of this person.
right.
Um, yeah, and that plays out, and yeah, and it's good to, especially if you're dealing with the relationships. And I don't know who or what your relationship dynamic looks like, but if you're having challenges in your relationships, it's always good to be mindful of that. Maybe this isn't about me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, maybe this is something related to what they were dealing with when they were their children, and they need that connection themselves to their inner child. And it doesn't mean that you excuse anyone's behavior,
Right.
uh, but I'm a big advocate for understanding. Um, and
They're being
so
triggered.
yeah, yeah. Vanessa says yes, I get it. So I'm glad that you can, I'm glad that was able to register with you. So yeah, that's something that we got to be especially mindful of. Whether it's coming from ourselves or whether it's coming from other person. Who's, as Toya talked about, who's responding in this moment? What does my inner child need based on maybe how I respond, based on how I responded to this person or how I respond to life. What does my inner child need? Um, and also asking the question, who's responding? Is it me or is it my inner child? And
Mhm.
and beginning to address it at that level.
Do you see there's another question that came in?
Oh yeah, yeah. Vanessa says, is the inner child only experienced with parent or is it other people in general? I always say influential figure, but Toya, what do you say?
Um, I think if I'm understanding her correctly, um, is their inner child only experience with parent? Like, Vanessa, clarify, are you saying is your inner child um experiences based on your parents, like how your parents interacted with you? I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question right. How are you understanding it, James?
I'm understanding it, and again, I could be off as well. So we'll wait for Toya. The way I'm understanding it is it just something from your parents? Oh, she said right. So whatever you
Okay.
said was right. Yeah.
So I believe it's on any adult caregivers. Um, or is it adults? Yeah, because like I think and James, feel free to chime in, but I think your like for example, if a 5-year-old going to school and they're at school maybe 7 8 hours a day with a really supportive kindergarten teacher, I think
Mhm.
that's also going to impact their experiences in a positive way.
Sure, sure. Well, some of us growing up were raised by grandparents or aunties.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, so that's why I always say some influential figure, and yeah. So whether you're experiencing what you feel are negative responses or positive responses as a child, and it's really about as a child how you define that adult. Is
Right.
this someone that's really really important? Because you could just be somebody that they could be somebody you see every so often, and they really not have any effect on you. But
Mhm.
it's the people that, like for me, like my deep love for my mother meant everything that she did affected me, good or bad, just because of the esteem that I held her. So as Toya said, whether it's a teacher or whether it's a parent or whatever influential figure, that's what I mean by influential. Somebody that influenced us, somebody that we held in high esteem. Vanessa said, "What's the age duration for the inner?" I'm sorry, she asked a question before that. So, parents, teacher, friends, guardians, anyone a child is nurtured by. Yes, anybody a child is nurtured by. And then the second question that Toya asked behind that was, "What's the age duration for the inner child?" And I'll let Toya start, and then I'll chime in. What's the age
Sorry.
where? What's
I was hearing like a beeping. I'm like, is that the fire alarm or something going on? In case
look?
anybody's wondering, like,
Since Toya's tribe is coming in, mine's probably looking, or I know Shondell still may be on, but I mess with Toya because she got a whole situation going on over there, y'all. Y'all don't even have a clue. I don't have a clue right now.
listen,
So
we're human.
we're you.
Oh, such a good question about the age of the inner child. So for me specifically, I had to connect with my teenage self, my 15, 16-year-old self who had a
Mm,
baby. So um I I don't think, but I think what James was saying before, there are certain ages, like the first 7 years of life,
yeah.
if certain events happen, will have a greater impact than if when a child is older. But I think the inner child, like I will say, I've done work with clients, you need to connect with your 18-year-old self. Like
Mm,
I think connecting with different ages, um, I don't think I would say there's any limitations with that. Because
yeah,
I've
I
had
like that.
older people. Yeah, would you agree?
I would agree. I like that answer. I like that answer. Absolutely, I would agree.
Yeah.
Um, and Toya has an answer. I mean, has a question. In terms of this black woman,
Do you
I'm
mean
sorry. In terms
Valentine?
of this black women are okay. I'm reading that wrong because I didn't see that. In terms of this, black women are not protected notion. Do you feel it comes back to inner child feeling not protected from their father? My, yeah,
I've thought about it.
yeah,
You want
yeah,
to want to
yeah.
say?
Since I deal with 100% women,
Mm,
um, I would say this is my experience. Not saying this everybody's. My experience is that it's 100% correct.
wow.
It is, one of the things that is important for me as a coach to women is that they see an example of healthy masculine energy as opposed to toxic masculine energy. And I know that some women were raised under that. Some faced some dealt with abandonment. Um, I remember speaking to someone recently, and I was telling her that her father was very critical of her, and I remember telling her that when especially as a girl, like I'm a girl dad, so as I'm partial to girls. As a girl, you all are children are born with so much purity, so much love, so much openness, so much acceptance that as an adult, if I'm dealing with low self-worth, if I'm dealing with low self-esteem, if I didn't have what I can't provide myself, growing up, then a child for some, can be especially triggering because that child just reminds them of what they are not.
Mhm.
And even some who abandon, that can be the cause for their abandonment. For those who are fathers who are critical, that can be the cause for their criticism because they're trying to even the balance the experience with this child. And the only way I can do that is to bring you down to the level that I feel that I'm at within myself. And it could be something that they're conscious of, it could be something that they're subconscious of. But toxic, toxic, toxic masculinity will cause a father or a male figure to not kind of fully embrace, fully accept, fully be in that space of protectiveness of their little girl or of their child, period. And it's often because the purity and the lovingness and the caringness and the openness of that child reminds them of everything that they're not, reminds them of how they're falling short, can trigger their insecurities even that much more. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
If
you
I
want to talk
could,
about?
yeah, it's so difficult to say. And as I'm thinking about, um, I'm trying to think specifically about Black women that I know personally
Yeah,
who have not always felt protected,
yeah,
um, by Black men. And the people that I know, I don't know their personal stories enough to say, but the notion makes sense. And I I also don't feel comfortable saying 100% that's what it is, because people have had such different experiences. And I know, living here in Connecticut, well, some might say I'm kind of in a little bit of a bubble. I think our experiences here, are very different compared to the rest of the US. So for me personally, and my father, even though my parents divorced when I was younger, I never felt this a strained relationship from my
Mhm.
dad.
Mhm.
And even men that I was in relationship with, I never felt that they couldn't protect me. So yeah, my experiences are very different, and I don't want to invalidate another woman's experience where maybe they
No.
haven't felt
Mhm.
protected.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I'll just make note of that. But what you were saying, James, really, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I would add to that that if we are experiencing, because we're all not, um, and I think she's speaking specifically about her experiences where Black women have not been protected by Black, and it brings me back to early years where it was told there's no good men out there, and
Yeah,
I think
people still say
and I
that.
think and I think we attract experiences that feel familiar to us on a subconscious level, right? So if I didn't experience that protectiveness when I was younger, then I'm going to gravitate while I'm consciously saying I no longer want to attract this. That programming will sometimes cause me to gravitate toward, uh, in this case, somebody who I don't feel protected by, or cause me to only see experiences where Black women are not being protected. Because I can say I now know hundreds, and I know quite a few men who take the stance that no, come hell or high water, I'm going to be that protective presence
Mhm.
for my woman, for my child, those types of things. But if all you know is all you know,
Yeah.
we tend to only see that, and we tend to
Mhm.
gravitate toward that. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. It's a very deep, yeah.
Yeah. So Vanessa says, in the protection about father. Oh, you're welcome, Vanessa. Is the protection? I made an answer. So is the protection about father, daughter? Is the protection about father, daughter, or the Black women? Okay, okay. Is the protection about father slash daughter or the Black women not protected American experience in general? I don't. Do you get that, Toya? Do you see that?
Yeah, I think she was asking, are Black women not feeling protected
Okay.
with the father-daughter dynamics, or not
Oh,
protected
just in
the
general.
American
Just in general.
experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully I answered that. I don't know if Toy wants to add any more to that, but
No, I think you did. I think you did. It's such a tricky thing, because again, I I cannot speak for other women's experiences. And there are all of the women out there who are saying they have not felt protected by Black men. Do they all have, did they all have some type of not a strong father figure in their life when they were younger? I cannot 100% say that. You've said that, you've seen that in your practice.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and
so
only and definitely, I want to temper that with only with, and I think that's the women that gravitate toward me, but definitely not saying that's all cases.
yeah,
Definitely not saying that's all cases, and I agree with you preferencing it that way, because I think Toy and I would probably have to both agree that we would kind of have to sit with you and get individual basis and get your full story to be able to tell you accurately what we strongly feel, around that.
yeah. Mhm.
Vanessa says, I really am glad Toya shares a perspective I relate to. Isn't she awesome, Vanessa? Yeah, she's super awesome. So
Thank you.
All right, and we and Toy and I think once we kind of debrief, we really I think we're in agreement. We want to bring this out even more. We want to continue this discussion because there's some things that we've bullet points that we've talked about that we want to can touch on, and it's really about. And Toy, correct me if I'm wrong. It's really about healing. We're like it's not just in the title. It's we're passionate about, even probably influenced by our own stories. We're really passionate
Of
about,
course.
yeah, seeing you create that shift in your life where you have the healthy relationships with
Yeah.
others and with yourself, where you have a healthy perspective on life and you are attracting healthy experiences.
Hmm.
Um,
And in business.
and in business, exactly, exactly. I remember when I was going through what I went through, I said it would be a shame that this is only for me. And
Yeah.
so, I think we've been, I don't want to say chosen, but we've been fortunate to kind of have the experiences that we've had so that we can be a light for others.
Yeah.
Vanessa says, honestly, I want you all to have a convo on the Black Women Protection Convo. Would love to be on. I think, we're talking inner child right now, but just some of the conversations I've had with Toya, and again, I came out the gate. I've been talking about relationships longer than I've been talking about anything
Yeah.
else. I wrote I shared with Toya, my book is a best-selling book. I even wrote a book to my daughter called Daddy Loves You. So
Mm.
relationships are big on us, big with both of us. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're on here talking about a whole bunch of stuff.
I will also say, so I don't think, remind me, but I don't think you were born in America, Vanessa. I
Yeah, she
think,
says I am Nigerian American, and I think.
yes, very different experience. People who, and even for myself, my
Mhm,
family being, I'm a first gen Jamaican, my family is from Jamaica. The experience, the Black experience versus the
mhm.
Afro-Caribbean experience is very different. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, that is something I would definitely keep in mind if we ever did a discussion. But yeah, I think it's a very touchy subject that
yeah,
needs to be carefully,
yeah. Talked about.
yeah, addressed. Hmm.
And I
Because it's
remember,
real for Black women, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I remember, I some years ago I dated a Nigerian. Uh, well, she was born in Nigeria. She came over here, and I was
Uh-oh,
kind of
Vanessa,
like,
talking about your people. Go ahead, sorry.
and I can't throw anything at her, right? So I just gotta take it right now. Uh, but also I was adopted by the culture, so I'm familiar with it needs to be addressed because our system needs that protection. It is not acceptable. And kind of veering away from what I was getting ready to
Oh,
say,
okay.
um, I think what can be added to the discussion to make that a different experience for any woman is how to command someone who will show up that has that mindset of protection, right?
So, uh,
Yeah.
sorry, James, to clarify, is Vanessa, so I didn't realize, it sounds like Vanessa is wanting to address it from a point of men need to be protecting us. So I was misunderstanding where she was coming from.
Okay, so give it back to me the way you understand it.
It needs to be addressed because our sisters need that protection. It's not as okay. So Vanessa is in agreement that this is happening. I thought it was the other way around.
Okay. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. No, she was saying that from her culture, the Nigerian culture, men are protected.
Oh, I didn't see that. Yes.